So in this classroom session, what I basically wanted to show is, kind of demystify what shape language is. And again, as a disclaimer, I want to say that this is from my personal experience. It's not anything that that's written in stone or anything. It's also kind of a new concept, not super new, but especially new to in the entertainment industry, to our generation, I believe. At least to a large extent, because most of the shape language these days is used in like animation or game art, or movies and whatever. So it's very prominent these days. So I just want to kind of give you the information that I've gathered throughout the years through my experience, and kind of share with you what I think about the subject. So getting into it, um, basically, what is shape language, right? That's kind of the first question. And to me, it's the use of graphical or symbolic elements, as we'll later see, to convey a sort of intent, mood, meaning, or story. This can basically mean anything, but usually with our designs, we're trying to convey something, right? We're trying to tell a story, make the viewer, the audience, aware of what we're trying to tell. And not only are we doing this through the actions that happen in the movie or the games, or the animation that we're seeing, it also happens subliminally through graphic design, and that's where we come in, right? Especially when we want to be concept artists, we need to be aware of this fact when we're trying, or when we're designing something new for a client. Now, the misconception often is that shape language is put in the same category as shape design, which is not true in my opinion, because shape design is the superficial arrangement of elements in a pleasing aesthetic manner to make our shape language more interesting. But it's not our basic shape language. And the analogy that I made in the classroom session is that, think of a certain dish, that you have. Let's say, to keep it simple, like macaroni and cheese, right? We have the same fundamental ingredients for this dish. That's our shape language, right? But if our mother cooks this dish, or a Michelin star chef cooks this dish, the presentation of that dish will be vastly different, and to some extent, of course, the flavors and stuff like that, but let's keep that aside. The presentation of the dish will be completely different, right? And this is where the shape design comes in. A Michelin star chef will think about the proportions, the division of shape, just the overall shape design, but it's not the language that's being conveyed through the dish. And that's the same for visual arts, right? The shape language is something that is trying to convey a mood, a flavor to the story, and the shape design is the superficial thing that makes it interesting, right? So moving on, in my opinion, there are two types of shape language. One is very obvious, right? It's graphical shape language through the use of 2D or 3D shapes. Not so obvious to a lot of you maybe is symbolic shape language. And symbolic shape language can basically be anything, but it's usually the thing that is trying to convey some sort of narrative, whether that's mythological or, just symbolic or iconic, or just everyday contemporary. These symbols can help us inform our shape language. Right, so on the graphical side of the types of shape language, we have three types, as you've seen in the video of this week's assignment. And so basically we have circular, triangular, and squarish, right? And circular usually conveys the meaning or narrative of soft, cute, powerful, innocence, unity, infinity, a lot of stuff like that. Triangular will usually mean harsh, sharp, movement, power. The movement is because a triangle has very diagonal lines. And so when we think of diagonal shapes and rhythms in like a composition or something, we usually associate it with action or an action scene or stuff like that. And the same is true for just the shape, right? When we have a lot of diagonal shapes, it conveys a sort of movement. And then on the squarish side, square means stable, balanced, strong. It's very relatable. Think of a brick house, very squarish. Think of skyscrapers. They feel stable, they feel strong, and also balanced. Okay. And again, then not so obvious is the symbolic side of shape language, right? So symbolic shapes can be anything that conveys, like I said, a story, a narrative, a sort of symbolism, or an archetype, right? The archetype is very important to us because as concept designers, we're usually hired to create some sort of archetype. And not only for characters, right? As I'll give you in a later example in this presentation, is that there can also be an archetype for environments or props or whatever, right? And so this is where symbolism becomes very powerful to use in our designs. Right, so a very good example of just basic graphic design or graphic shape language without the use of symbolism is found a lot of times in children's animation, right? Again, with I use the example here of Pokemon, but you can see it in a lot of different examples as well. And as you can see here is that we have Gengar and Jigglypuff, right? And so immediately you see a difference between the two. You feel that, it's like an intuitive feeling that you get, that like one is more sinister and evil, where the other is more soft, and more friendly. And the reason that is primarily due to shapes. So the designers of Pokemon very much were aware of this fact. And so as you can see with Gengar, there's a lot of triangular elements that inform his design. From the ears to his eyes have been cut off in like this triangular vibe. His feet, his hands, everything has that triangular feeling. Now, of course, because this is a children's program, we still need to make it cute and innocent. We don't want to make it too horrific or sinister. So an overarching like circular shape is still used in the design to convey that soft and cute character, but with that evil inspired triangular shape. Juxtaposed to that is Jigglypuff, which is just all cylinders, right? Or circular design. It's all soft, cute shapes. There's nothing menacing about this character, right? It's all soft and all round. And you can see this, do this test for yourself with other Pokemon, where you can really see how they're using or how they effectively are using shape language to convey that message. Right, so as you saw with Gengar, is that there is a combination of shapes being used in order to effectively communicate the intent of the design and also create the world, or create a coherency in the world that we're designing for. And we can do that graphically, but we can also do that with symbols. As you've seen in the video that I've showed you, you can make a combination of just graphic shapes where you have like circular and triangular shapes with like a bent manipulation to create something, or the box, the cylinder, in like a skew. And if you don't know about this shape manipulation, be sure to check out Classroom 1 and 3, where I talk more in depth about shape manipulation. All right, so then again, we can also start combining graphical shape language with symbolic shape language, right? So I have the skull here, for instance, which is symbolic for like death and decay, or or even rebirth or something like that. And so what I'm doing here is I'm combining the circular shape with the skull to create more of a cutesy kind of skull, right? Still kind of believable, but a bit more stylized. And then I can do that with triangle shapes and the skull to create a more menacing look of a skull-like shape. And you might recognize this shape because it's based on Reaper's design from Overwatch. And the reason why I want to use a Overwatch character is because the shape language in the characters in Overwatch is super effective, right? So the designers are very much aware of what they're doing with shape language, and I want to show you guys that with this presentation and show you what they're actually thinking about when designing this character. So as we've seen before, is that we can use or we can combine graphical and symbolic shapes to create new original shapes and inform our design. And that's exactly what's happening here with Reaper. So they have combined the triangular shape language with the symbolic shape language of a skull to inform his design. And as you can see, and if I go over it for a second, is that this shape is what they have determined to be the main shape language of the design, right? If we just simplify it very much, this is like the main shape language. And as you can see throughout the design, that's exactly what they're doing with that shape language. So they've established that triangular symbolic shape, and then they're reusing that with good shape design, right? So they're using good shape design, good proportions, and, you know, rule of thirds, big, medium, small shapes with that shape language in order to inform the design of Reaper and still make it look functional as well, right? At all times, we don't, function or form follows function. So at all times, they want to keep it functional because this is more of a sci-fi environment. But the shape language is very much informed by that symbolic and graphical shapes. Right, and now moving on. All right, thank you all for watching. If you've enjoyed this clip, make sure you head over to artwatt.com, where we have a lot more of this content, along with classrooms to accompany each of these assignment cycles, tutorials, a complete beginner's course for you to enjoy and get you up and running with the program. We have an amazing community on Discord where I'm very active. We have some great support teachers. So if you want to get access to all of that, make sure you visit artwatt.com, and I will see you there.